The forward base on Planet 7 was loud and busy. Soldiers from a dozen different worlds walked through the metal halls. Some had scales, some had fur, some had too many eyes or too many arms. Private was one of them. She was tall and covered in blue-green scales, with 4 arms that she used to check her plasma rifle again and again. She was nervous. Her hands would not stop shaking. This was her first real mission, not a training exercise, not a simulation. A real mission on a real planet where real enemies waited in the jungle outside. The Devourer swarm had been eating planets for centuries. They moved from world to world, consuming everything. Plants, animals, people. Nothing was left behind. Just dead rocks floating in space. The Galactic Coalition had formed to stop them, bringing together species that had never worked together before. Had joined because she wanted to protect her home world. She had trained for 2 years. She had scored well in all her tests. But now, standing in the hangar bay waiting for her assignment, she felt like a child pretending to be a soldier. An officer with skin and no mouth handed her her assignment was simple. Recon Unit 17. Scout enemy positions. Report back. No combat expected. Easy work for a first mission. She felt a little better until she saw her unit. It was just one person, a human. Humans were strange too. She had heard many stories about them. Some said they were weak and primitive. Their home planet had been destroyed by the swarm 40 years ago, and most people thought they should have died out. But somehow they kept fighting. They refused to disappear. The human sat alone on a metal crate cleaning an old weapon. Not a plasma rifle like everyone else carried. A projectile weapon. The kind that fired small pieces of metal. Ancient technology. Wondered why anyone would use something so outdated. He looked ordinary, average height for a human, dark hair with streaks of. His face had lines and small scars. His eyes were calm but tired, like he had not slept well in many years. He wore standard Coalition armor, but it was covered in scratches and burn marks. Well used. Walked over and stood at attention. Private, reporting for duty. The human looked up. His eyes studied her for a moment. Then he nodded and went back to cleaning his weapon. Sergeant Park, sit down. We leave in 10 minutes. She sat on a crate across from him. The silence was uncomfortable. She wanted to say something to make conversation, but she did not know what humans like to talk about. Is this your first battle? She finally asked. Park stopped cleaning. He looked at her, and a small smile crossed his tired face. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who knew a joke that nobody else understood. First today, he said. Did not understand what he meant. She wanted to ask, but something in his voice told her not to push. Instead, she looked at the again. Simple recon, in and out, nothing dangerous. Park finished with his weapon and stood up. He moved slowly, carefully, like every motion was planned. He checked his pack, his ammunition, his armor. Everything was done in a specific order. Realized he had done this thousands of times before. Stay close, Park said, not looking at her. Stay quiet, and when I say run, you run, no questions, no hesitation, you run. Yes, Sergeant. They walked to the deployment zone. Other soldiers watched them pass. Noticed something strange. The other species, the ones who had been in the Coalition for years, looked at Park with respect. Some even nodded at him. A few stepped out of his way. One old soldier, a massive creature covered in bone plates, stopped Park and put a hand on his shoulder. Good hunting, human, he said in a deep voice. Park nodded, same to you. Wanted to ask how they knew each other, but Park was already moving and she had to hurry to keep up. The jungle of 7 was thick and dark. Giant trees blocked the sun. Strange plants glowed with soft light. Animals made sounds in the distance, clicks and howls and screams that did not sound like any creature had ever heard. Park moved through the jungle like he belonged there. He made no sound. He left no trail. tried to copy him, but her boots snapped twigs and her armor scraped against branches. Each noise made her wince. They traveled for 3 hours. Park never spoke. He just moved forward, checking his scanner, looking at the trees, listening to sounds that could not hear. Finally, they stopped at a ridge overlooking a valley. Park lay flat on the ground and pulled out viewing equipment, did the same. What she saw made her blood go cold. The valley was full of swarm soldiers, not a scouting party like the briefing said, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. They were building something, a massive structure of organic material and metal, landing pads, weapons platforms. This was not a small force. This was an invasion army. Sergeant whispered, her voice shaking. The briefing said. The briefing was wrong. Park's voice was flat, calm, like he had expected this. They knew we were coming. The comms are jammed. We cannot call for help. Felt panic rising in her chest. What do we do? Park put away his viewing equipment. He checked his weapon. Then he looked at her with those tired, calm eyes. We have 2 choices, he said. We can try to run back to base. They will catch us before we get halfway. We die tired and afraid. He paused. Or we can make them regret ever landing on this planet. We hurt them so bad that they never forget the name of this place. Then we walk out. Stared at him. That is impossible. There are 2 of us. There are thousands of them. Park smiled that strange smile again. He reached into his pack and pulled out a small case. Inside were dozens of devices she did not recognize. Grenades of different colors. Small boxes with wires. Things that looked like they belonged in a laboratory, not a battlefield. I never go anywhere unprepared, Park said. First lesson of surviving Earth's fall. He closed the case and looked at the enemy army below. Now, let me show you how humans fight a war. Did not know if she should feel hope or terror. Maybe both. She looked at the human beside her, this ordinary-looking man with his ancient weapon and tired eyes, and wondered what secrets he carried. She looked at her one more time. Park's service record was there, but most of it was hidden, blocked, classified. Only one number was visible. Confirmed engagements, 2,847. Put the away. Her hands had stopped shaking. She did not know what was going to happen next, but somehow, sitting beside this strange human, she believed they might actually survive. Tell me what to do, she said. Park nodded. Good, first we watch, we learn, then we hunt. They watched the enemy camp for 2 hours. Park did not move. He did not speak. He just watched, counting soldiers, marking positions on a small device, studying the patterns of their patrols. Tried to stay still, but her body was not made for waiting. Her scales itched. Her muscles ached. Fear sat heavy in her stomach like a stone. Finally, Park put away his equipment and motioned for her to follow. They moved back from the ridge, deeper into the jungle, until the enemy camp was hidden by trees. We need to go around, Park said quietly. Find their weak points, water supply, ammunition storage, command structure. How do you know they have weak points? Park looked at her. Everything has weak points, every army, every fortress, every creature. You just have to look hard enough. They moved through the jungle. Park asked her questions as they walked. What was her home world like? Why did she join the coalition? Did she have family waiting for her? Answered carefully. Her home world was called Prime, beautiful oceans, floating cities. She had joined because the swarm was getting closer to her sector every year. Her parents were still alive. Her younger brother had wanted to join the military too, but she made him promise to stay in school. You are brave, Park said, leaving everything to fight monsters. What about you? Asked. What was Earth like? Park was quiet for a long time. They walked through a field of glowing flowers before he spoke. Earth was beautiful, he said. His voice was soft, like he was talking about a dream. Blue oceans, green forests, cities that touched the clouds, billions of people living their lives thinking they were safe. He stopped walking. His eyes looked at something far away, something could not see. I was 16 when the swarm came. We thought we were ready. We had weapons, we had armies, we had hope. He shook his head. It was not enough, nothing was enough. What happened? They came in waves, millions of them. They ate through our defenses like they were made of paper. The bombs did not work. The guns did not work. Nothing stopped them. Park started walking again, his voice flat. The evacuation ships could only save a few million people, out of 8 billion. My mother put me on one of the last transports. She stayed behind. Felt her heart hurt. She died. She made sure the transport escaped. Her and my father, he was a soldier. He fought until he ran out of ammunition. Then he fought with his hands. Park touched a small object hanging from his neck, a piece of metal on a chain. This was his identification tag. Someone found it after the battle, sent it to me. They walked in silence, did not know what to say. What could anyone say to someone who had lost everything? How do you keep fighting? She finally asked. After all that. Park stopped. He turned to look at her. His eyes were not tired anymore. They were burning with something deep and old, something that had been burning for 40 years. Because stopping means they win, and I promised my mother I would make them pay, every single one of them, for every life they took, for every world they destroyed. He paused. Grief is just love with nowhere to go. I give it somewhere to go. I give it to them. A sound came from ahead, clicking, scraping, the sound of swarm soldiers moving through the jungle. Park grabbed and pulled her behind a massive tree. They pressed against the bark, not breathing. Through the gaps in the leaves, saw them. Swarm scouts, 4 of them. Each one was the size of a small vehicle. Their bodies were made of black shell, hard and shiny. They had 6 legs that ended in sharp points. Their heads had no eyes, just rows of teeth and long antennae that moved constantly, searching for prey. They were terrifying. Had seen pictures during training, but pictures could not capture the horror of seeing them in person. They moved wrong, too fast, too smooth, like machines pretending to be animals. Park did not look afraid. He watched them with the calm focus of a predator studying its prey. His hand moved slowly to his pack. The scouts passed by, close enough that could smell them. They smelled like rotting meat and burned metal. Then they were gone, moving deeper into the jungle. Park waited 5 minutes before he moved. 4 scouts means they are looking for something, us probably. They know someone is watching. What do? We make them confused. Park pulled out a small device from his pack. This releases a chemical into the air. To swarm soldiers, it smells like other swarm soldiers, different hive, enemy hive. Did not understand. Why does that matter? The swarm is not one army. It is many hives working together, but they do not trust each other. They only cooperate because their queens force them to. Park smiled. If they smell an enemy hive, they will think they are being invaded from within. They will start fighting each other. He placed the device in the hollow of a tree. Then he pulled out more devices. This one poisons water, only affects swarm biology. This one disrupts their communication signals. This one is a simple explosive for their ammunition. Watched him work. Every movement was precise, practiced. He had done this many times before. You are not just a soldier, she said slowly. You are something else. Park finished placing the last device. He looked at her with those burning eyes. After Earth fell, a lot of humans wanted revenge. The coalition did not know what to do with us. We were too angry, too reckless, so they made special units. Humans only. We learned how to fight the swarm without big armies, without ships, just small groups causing big problems. What happened to the others, the other humans in these units? Park was quiet. The answer was in his silence. I am the last of my original squad, he finally said. 32 people. We fought together for 20 years. Now it is just me. He stood up. But their work continues. Everything I learned, I pass on. That is how we win. Not in one battle, in 1,000 battles, in 10,000 we wear them down, we make them afraid. They moved through the jungle as night fell. The glowing plants made everything look like a dream. Park placed more devices, poison in the water, explosives near fuel, chemicals that would drive the swarm crazy. By midnight, they had circled the entire camp. Park had placed 37 devices, had learned how each one worked. Now we wait, Park said. Dawn is when they are most active. Dawn is when we hurt them. They found a hidden spot in a cave and rested. Could not sleep. Her mind was full of questions. Sergeant, she said quietly, do you think we will survive? Park was silent for a moment. I do not know. I have survived things that should have killed me 100 times, but luck runs out eventually. He looked at her. What I do know is that we will make them remember us. Whatever happens, they will tell stories about this night, about the 2 soldiers who walked into their camp and made them bleed. Thought about that. It was not comforting, but somehow it was enough. Get some sleep, Park said. Tomorrow we hunt. Dawn came slowly on 7. The sky turned from black to purple to orange. The jungle woke up around them. Birds that were not really birds made sounds in the trees. Small creatures ran through the undergrowth. And in the valley below, the swarm camp exploded into chaos. Watched from the ridge with wide eyes. The first explosion came from the ammunition storage. A ball of fire rose into the sky, sending pieces of metal and shell flying in all directions. Swarm soldiers ran in confusion, not knowing what was happening. Then the second explosion, the third, the fourth. Park sat beside her, calm and quiet. He ate a ration bar and watched his work unfold like it was a normal morning. The water poison should be working now, he said between bites. They drank from the stream during the night. In about an hour, their scouts will start dying. The others will not know why. Saw soldiers in the camp fighting each other, not the controlled movements of training, real fighting, claws and teeth and blood. The chemical Park had released was working. Different groups thought they were being attacked by enemy hives. This is not combat, said slowly. This is something else. This is how humans fight, Park replied. We are not strong like your people. We cannot regrow limbs like we do not have natural armor like we die easily. He finished his ration bar and stood up. So we learn to fight differently. We use our minds. We use fear. We make our enemies destroy themselves. They watched for another hour. The chaos in the camp grew worse. Fires spread. Groups turned on each other. The careful organization of the invasion army fell apart like sand in water. 30% of their forces, Park said finally, gone, and we have not fired a single shot. Should have felt victory. Instead, she felt something cold in her stomach. This was efficient. This was effective, but it was also terrifying. She looked at the human beside her and wondered what kind of species could think like this. Park seemed to read her thoughts. You are wondering if humans are monsters. She did not answer. That was answer enough. Maybe we are, Park said quietly. The swarm does not feel guilt. They do not feel mercy. They eat and move on. If you fight them with honor, with rules, with kindness, you die. He looked at her with those tired eyes. My mother was kind. She believed in peace. She tried to communicate with the swarm, find common ground. They ate her while she was still talking. Felt sick. I used to believe in honor too, Park continued. In fair fights, in giving enemies a chance to surrender. Then I watched my father hold a door closed with his bare hands while his squad escaped. He held it until the swarm tore him apart. There was nothing fair about it. He started walking. Come, we need to move before they organize again. They circled around the camp, staying in the jungle. Park stopped every few hundred meters to set more traps. Deadfalls made from heavy branches. Pits covered with leaves. Tripwires connected to explosives. The swarm will send hunters after us, he explained. They know someone is attacking them now. We need to make the jungle dangerous. Every step they take should hurt them. Helped him work. Her forearms were useful for this. She could dig and build and tie faster than Park could with two. He seemed impressed but said nothing. By midday, they had turned a kilometer of jungle into a killing ground. Then the hunters came. Heard them first, the clicking of their legs, the high-pitched screaming that was their language. They were fast, moving through the trees like shadows. Down, Park whispered. They hid under a fallen tree covered in mud and leaves. Through a gap saw the hunters pass. These were not scouts. They were bigger, faster. Their bodies were covered in sharp spines and their claws could cut through metal. 10 of them, 20, 50. They were not searching randomly. They moved with purpose, following a trail, following their trail. Park pulled out a small device and pressed a button. Behind them the jungle erupted. Explosions, screams. The traps they had set were triggered either by the hunters or by Park's signal. Could not see what was happening, but she could hear it. The sound of bodies falling. The sound of creatures dying. When the noise stopped, Park stood up. Move now. They ran, not toward the base. That path was blocked. They ran deeper into the jungle, toward a river Park had seen on the map. Behind them the screaming started again. The hunters were still coming. Some had survived the traps. Her lungs burned. Her legs ached. She was trained for combat, not for running. But Park did not slow down. He moved through the jungle like he was made for this, dodging trees and jumping roots without thinking. They reached the river. It was wide and fast, full of cold water from the mountains. In, Park said. The water will hide our scent. Jumped in. The cold hit her like a wall. She gasped, trying to keep her head above water. Park was beside her, pulling her toward the far shore. They reached the other side and collapsed on the rocks. Behind them, the hunters reached the river's edge. They screamed in frustration, moving back and forth, searching for a way across. Park pulled out his old rifle and took aim. 3 shots, 3 hunters fell. The others scattered, hiding in the trees. They were confused. In their entire existence, no prey had ever fought back like this. Park did not smile. He just reloaded and waited. They will find another way across, said. Yes, but it will take time we will use. They moved upriver, putting more distance between them and the hunters. Park was limping now. Saw blood on his leg, a cut from the rocks or maybe from a hunter's claw. You are hurt. I have been hurt before. He did not slow down. Pain is just information. It tells you that you are still alive. By evening, they had reached a cave system. Park led them inside, checking for threats, finding a defensible position. He finally sat down, his back against the stone wall. We rest here, he said. They will not attack at night. The swarm does not see well in darkness. Sat across from him. Her body was exhausted, but her mind would not stop. Sergeant, today in the camp, how many of them did we kill? Park was quiet for a moment. I do not count anymore. The numbers stopped meaning anything a long time ago. He looked at her. But if you need a number, maybe 300, maybe more. 300 with 2 people. No army, no ships, just tricks and traps and an old rifle. How many more battles like this have you fought? Too many? Park closed his eyes. When I was young, I thought there would be an end. One final battle, victory or death, but war does not work that way. It just continues, day after day, year after year. You keep fighting until you cannot fight anymore. That sounds lonely. Park opened his eyes. For a moment, saw something behind the tiredness, something broken. It is, but loneliness is better than extinction. I would rather be the last human alive than let them win. A sound echoed from deeper in the cave. Movement. The swarm had found them faster than Park expected. He stood up, grabbing his rifle. The tiredness vanished. The broken thing was gone. Only the soldier remained. They are here, get ready. Grabbed her plasma rifle. Her hands were not shaking anymore. She was not the frightened recruit from yesterday. Somewhere in the last 2 days she had changed. "I am ready," she said. Park nodded. "Good, let us teach them another lesson." The darkness of the cave filled with the sound of clicking legs. The first hunter came out of the darkness like a nightmare, all teeth and claws and rage. It moved so fast that barely had time to raise her rifle. Park was faster. His old weapon barked twice. The hunter fell, sliding to a stop at their feet. "Move deeper," Park ordered. "The cave narrows. They cannot swarm us if they can only come one at a time." They ran into the darkness. Eyes adjusted slowly. They could see better in low light than humans, so she took the lead. Behind them, more hunters poured into the cave entrance. Their screaming echoed off the stone walls. The cave did narrow. Soon, they were in a passage barely wide enough for two people. Park stopped and turned around. "Hold this position," he said. "I will set charges at the entrance. You cannot go back there alone." "I have done worse things alone." He handed her his rifle. "If anything comes through that is not me, shoot it." He disappeared into the darkness, waited, her heart's pounding. 1 minute, 2, 5. Explosions shook the cave. Dust fell from the ceiling. The screaming of the hunters changed from rage to pain. Park emerged from the darkness, covered in dust and blood that was not his own. He took his rifle back and nodded. "That will slow them down. The entrance is blocked. They will have to dig through." They moved deeper into the cave system. Park used a small light to check the map on his device. There was another exit 2 kilometers through the tunnels. If they could reach it, they might have a chance. "Sergeant," said as they walked, "can I ask you something? You have been asking questions for 2 days. Why stop now? How many battles have you really fought? Not today, in your whole life." Park was quiet. Their footsteps echoed in the tunnel. Water dripped somewhere in the distance. "I stopped counting after 1,000, he finally said. "That was 20 years ago." Tried to understand that number. 1,000 battles, more than 1,000. Fighting and killing and surviving again and again for 4 decades. "How are you still alive?" "Luck, skill, stubbornness," Park shrugged. "Humans are not the strongest species. We do not have special powers or natural weapons, but we have something else." "What?" "We do not know when to quit." Park smiled slightly. "Other species, when they lose, they accept it. They surrender. They die quietly. Humans do not do that. We fight until there is nothing left, and then we find something else to fight with." They reached a larger chamber. An underground lake filled most of the space, the water black and still. The only way forward was to swim. "Can you swim?" Park asked. "Yes." They entered the water. It was cold, colder than the river. Felt her muscles tightening. Beside her, Park moved with steady strokes, his face set with determination. Halfway across, Park stopped. "Sergeant, something is in the water." Looked down. In the darkness below she saw movement, shapes, long and thin with too many legs. "Larvae," Park said, his voice flat. "Young swarm, they have not developed shells yet, but they have teeth." He pulled out his last grenade. "When I throw this, swim as fast as you can. Do not stop for anything." "What about you?" "I will be right behind you." He threw the grenade into the water behind them. A muffled explosion. The lake churned, screaming from below. They swam, pushed her body harder than she ever had before. Her arms burned. Her lungs screamed for air. Something brushed against her leg and she kicked wildly. She reached the shore and pulled herself out, turned around. Park was still in the water. He was moving, but something had his leg. Blood spread in the water around him. Did not think. She grabbed a rock from the ground and threw it as hard as she could. Her strength sent it flying like a bullet. It hit the water near Park, striking something beneath the surface. The grip on Park's leg released. He pulled himself to shore, gasping and bleeding. "Good arm," he said between breaths. "Remind me not to make you angry." Helped him up. His leg was torn, deep cuts from teeth that had almost reached bone. He could barely stand. "We need to keep moving," he said. "You need medical attention. I need to get you out of here alive." He used his rifle as a crutch and started walking. "That is the mission now. Everything else is secondary." They continued through the tunnels. Park's pace was slower, his limp getting worse. Blood left a trail behind them. "Tell me about your brother," Park said suddenly. "What?" "You said you had a younger brother. Tell me about him." Did not understand why he was asking, but she answered. His name was. He was 17, still in school. He wanted to be a scientist to study the stars. He was smart and funny and kind. "He sounds like a good person," Park said. "He is. I want him to have a future. A real future without the swarm." "That is worth fighting for," Park coughed. His breathing was getting heavier. "Hold on to that. When things get dark, that is what keeps you going." They reached the exit of the cave. Moonlight spilled through the opening. They were on the other side of a mountain, far from the swarm camp. But they were not alone. Blocking the exit was the queen. Had never seen a queen class before. She was massive, 3 times the size of the regular hunters. Her body was covered in thick armor. Her eyes, dozens of them, glowed with cold intelligence. She had followed them through the mountains, tracking them, hunting them personally. Behind her were hundreds of soldiers, the survivors of the camp. All of them were focused on the 2 figures at the cave mouth. Sergeant whispered, "What do we do?" Park looked at the queen, at the army behind her, at the cave behind them. There was nowhere to run. He reached into his pack and pulled out a device. Not a weapon, a beacon. "This transmits our location to the coalition fleet," he said. "Along with everything we learned, troop numbers, positions, weaknesses." He activated it. A small light blinked red. "If we die here, they will know where to strike." "That does not help us." "No," Park raised his rifle. His hands were steady, even though his body was failing. "But it means we did not die for nothing." The queen moved forward. She was faster than something that big should be. Her voice came out like grinding metal. "Humans," she said, somehow she could speak. "You think you matter, you are nothing, dust. Your species is almost extinct. Why do you keep fighting?" Park laughed. It was a real laugh, tired and broken and genuine. "Because you killed my mother," he said. "Because you killed my father. Because you destroyed my home and ate everything I loved." He raised his rifle. "And because making you bleed is the only thing that makes me feel alive anymore." He fired. The shot hit the queen in one of her eyes. She screamed, a sound that shook the mountain. The army charged, raised her rifle and stood beside Park. She was going to die here. She knew it. But somehow, standing next to this broken, stubborn human, she was not afraid. "It has been an honor serving with you," Park said. "The honor is mine, Sergeant." They opened fire. The world became noise and fire. Fired her plasma rifle until it overheated. She picked up rocks and threw them with all 4 arms. Beside her, Park's old weapon barked again and again, each shot finding its target. The swarm soldiers fell, but more kept coming. There were too many. Wave after wave, climbing over their dead, reaching for the 2 soldiers who dared to fight back. A claw caught her arm. She felt scales tear away. Pain shot through her body. She screamed and fired point-blank into the creature's head. Park took a hit to his chest. His armor stopped the worst of it, but the impact sent him to his knees. He got back up. He always got back up. "Keep fighting," he growled. "Make them pay for every step." The queen watched from behind her soldiers. Her damaged eye leaked black fluid. She was patient. She knew they would fall eventually. All prey fell eventually. His rifle stopped working. Empty, broken. She did not know which. She grabbed a dead hunter's claw and used it as a weapon, slashing at anything that came close. Park was out of ammunition. He used his rifle as a club, swinging with precision that came from decades of combat. Even wounded, even exhausted, He moved like a force of nature. But it was not enough. They were pushed back against the cave wall, nowhere to go. The swarm closed in. The queen moved forward. She wanted to finish this herself. "Your beacon was clever," she said, her voice full of contempt. "But help will not come in time. You will die here, human, and I will eat your bones." Park spat blood on the ground. "You talk too much." The queen raised her claw. Then the sky split open. Light poured down from above. Not sunlight, something brighter, hotter. Looked up and saw fire falling from the heavens. Orbital strikes. The coalition fleet had arrived. The first blast hit the swarm army like the fist of a god. Soldiers were vaporized. The ground shook. The queen screamed in shock and turned to look at the sky. Followed the bombardment. Dozens of them. Hundreds. They screamed through the atmosphere, their engines burning bright. Coalition soldiers poured out before they even landed, firing weapons, throwing grenades, pushing back the swarm. Park grabbed and pulled her toward the cave. "Cover, now." They hid inside as the battle raged outside. Explosion after explosion, screaming, gunfire, the sounds of war at a scale had never experienced. It lasted for what felt like hours. Then slowly the noise faded. The screaming stopped. The gunfire became scattered, then silent. A voice called from outside. "Sergeant Park, Private, is anyone alive in there?" Park coughed. "We are here." Coalition medics rushed in. They stabilized Park's wounds, bandaged his arm, gave them both water and nutrients. Outside, the battlefield was covered in swarm bodies. The army that had seemed impossible to defeat was destroyed. But the queen was not among the dead. "She escaped," a coalition officer reported. "We tracked her toward the mountains. Should we pursue?" Park, despite his wounds, despite the medics trying to hold him down, stood up. He grabbed his empty rifle and started walking. "Sergeant, you need medical attention," said. "I need to finish this." His eyes were burning again, that fire that had kept him alive for 40 years. "She does not get to run, not today." He walked out of the cave and followed the queen's trail, followed him. She did not know why, she just knew she could not let him go alone. They found the queen in a valley trying to reach a hidden ship. She was wounded, leaking fluid from a dozen injuries. Her soldiers were dead. She was alone. She turned when she heard them coming. Her remaining eyes focused on Park. "You should be dead," she said. "I have heard that before." Park raised his rifle, empty, useless, but he held it like it was the most dangerous weapon in the galaxy. The queen laughed. "You cannot hurt me with that, human. You have nothing left." Park smiled, that tired, knowing smile that had first seen 2 days ago. "I do not need a weapon," he said. "I just needed to slow you down." The queen's eyes went wide. She looked up. A single coalition ship hovered above them. Its main cannon was aimed directly at her. Park pulled a communicator from his pocket. "Fire." The cannon fired. A beam of pure energy hit the queen. She had time for one final scream before she was gone. Nothing remained but a smoking crater. Park stood at the edge of the crater for a long time. His body swayed. His wounds were bleeding through his bandages, but he was smiling. "That was for my mother," he said quietly, "and my father, and everyone you ever took." Then he collapsed. Caught him before he hit the ground. Medics rushed over, carrying him to a transport ship. They said he had lost too much blood, internal damage, broken bones. He should have died hours ago. He had kept moving through sheer will. But he was still alive. His heart was still beating. His lungs were still working. He was too stubborn to die. 6 months later, stood in a training facility on the Coalition's main station. She wore the uniform of a senior instructor now. Her arm had healed, leaving behind silver scars where her scales had not grown back. In front of her stood a group of new recruits, different species, different worlds, all of them young and frightened, just like she had been 6 months ago. Behind her, leaning on a cane but very much alive, stood Park. He had been promoted. They wanted to give him a command position, a desk job, something safe. He had refused. He said he would rather keep teaching. One of the recruits, a nervous from the colonies, looked at with wide eyes. "Instructor," the recruit asked, voice shaking, "is this your first battle?" Smiled. It was the same tired, knowing smile she had learned from Park. The smile of someone who understood something that could not be taught, only experienced. "First today," she said. Park laughed behind her. It was a good sound, a real sound, the sound of someone who had found something worth living for beyond revenge. The recruits looked confused. They did not understand the joke, remembered feeling the same way. They would learn. Everyone learned eventually. "Listen carefully," said, her voice strong and clear. "I am going to teach you how to survive, not how to be brave, not how to be heroes, how to survive. There is a difference." She looked at the young faces in front of her. In a few weeks, some of them would be in combat, some of them would die, but others would live. They would fight. They would learn. They would pass on what they knew to the next generation. That was how wars were won, not in one great battle, in thousands of small ones, in stubborn soldiers who refused to quit, in knowledge passed from one survivor to the next. Park stepped forward, his cane tapping on the floor. "What my colleague is saying is simple. The swarm thinks in terms of species. They see numbers, resources, prey." He looked at each recruit in turn. "We think in terms of individuals. Every single one of you matters. Every single one of you can make a difference." He pointed at, 6 months ago she was just like you, scared, untested. On her first mission she faced thousands of enemies with nothing but her training and her will to survive. He smiled. "She is still here. The enemies are not." The recruits straightened up. Pride and determination replaced some of the fear in their eyes. "The swarm has numbers," said. "They have strength. They have been consuming worlds for centuries, but they do not have what we have." "What is that?" the nervous recruit asked. Looked at Park, he nodded. "Stubbornness," she said, "the refusal to give up, the ability to keep fighting when everything says you should stop." She stepped closer to the recruits. "The swarm does not understand that. They cannot understand it, and that is why we will win." She turned toward the training ground. "Now, let us begin. We have a lot of work to do." As the recruits followed her, Park stood alone for a moment. He looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, the swarm was still consuming worlds, still growing, still hunting. But somewhere out there, humans and their allies were fighting back. One battle at a time, one soldier at a time, one small victory after another. It was not much, but it was everything. Park touched the identification tag around his neck. His father's tag. He thought about his mother, his father, his lost squad, his lost world. "First today," he said quietly, "last never." Then he followed his students to the training ground. There was work to do. There was always work to do. And he would keep doing it until his very last breath.